Unit 10, our final unit, we're going to focus on economics, then rights, and then foreign affairs. Stagflation, gold standard, OPEC. We're talking 70s economics today. You can see some of the economic content that we will study in the next 3 videos. Gold standard, stagflation, and OPEC. When you spend money, let's say you buy a toy car from the store. That toy car had to be made in a factory. And the more toy cars that are sold or made means they're going to have to hire more workers. So the more you buy will result in more workers. They're also going to spend money and the economy goes up, and it starts with you buying goods. So in theory, hey, if we had more money, we could buy more stuff or toy cars. And if we buy more stuff or more toy cars, they're going to make more. It means more workers spending, and the economy grows. Yay, spending typically leads to an increase in growth in the economy. Let's go back and do some simple economic ideas. When demand is up, when people really, really want something, the price goes up. And when demand is low, people don't want to buy something because it's bad or it's weak or it's terrible or it's inferior, then the price of that product will have to drop. Supply also affects price. When the supply of something is rare or hard to find or hard to get, it becomes very valuable. Gold, diamonds, technically. You name it. Bugattis, Teslas, fancy, special things are expensive because there's competition for very few goods. And when there's a lot of competition and people are bidding for very few goods, the person that bids the most or is willing to spend the most gets that rare special object. The opposite happens when the supply of something is really widely available. Anyone can get it. So there's not like this big fight for this good. Anyone can get it. So the price, it becomes less valuable, less rare, and the price of that good drops. If I can get it anywhere I want, then I'm going to go find the place where I can get it at the lowest price. When there was only one piece of gold in the world, everyone was fighting for that piece of gold and the highest bidder got it. If there was gold everywhere, I can go to the store down the street. I can go to the store 2 blocks away. I can go to the store in the other city. I can go to all the different stores in all that town, and I can find the lowest price possible, and so the price is going to drop. Now, I want to focus on supply, but mainly I want to talk about how supply affects the value of a dollar. I know this is kind of weird. It's easy to understand how supply affects goods and tangible goods and services and actual products that we buy, but it also affects the value of a $1 bill, of a $10 bill, of $100. When the supply of money is low, imagine if money was very rare and was hard to get, then it's going to be valuable. And the value of that dollar might actually be worth more than the number printed on it. I know it's strange, bear with me. And the opposite is true. If it's easy to get dollars and everyone had dollars, just like if everyone had gold, if everyone had a Bugatti, if everyone had a Tesla, it wouldn't be that rare, it wouldn't be that special, and it more than likely wouldn't be that valuable. The same thing works for money. This is called inflation. 2 ways to look at it: the devaluation of money, or we've taken away the value of the money. You can also look at it from the angle of the price of everything increases. The price of all the goods and services is increased because the value of the money is low. So there's 2 ways. Either the money's not worth anything anymore, or the general rise in prices. That is inflation, and that happens when the supply of money increases. Oh, and there's plenty of videos on my social studies website, socialstudiesgames.net, and my YouTube page that will explain this. But what we're focusing on is when the supply of money goes up, the price goes down. When the government prints too much money, or the government produces a lot of money, they print it, they loan it out to the banks at a very low rate. The banks loan it out to us at a very low rate. So there's a lot of money in the economy. We flood the economy, the nation, the country, all the stores with money. It becomes worth less. Its value shrinks. So imagine you have $100. In reality, that $100 is only worth $50. No, it isn't. It says 100 right here. It says 100. Yes, I know it says 100 right there. But if you go into the store today and you buy $100 worth of goods at the grocery store, cool. And then tomorrow the government prints a bunch of money and you go into the store and you try to buy goods with $100. You can still buy things, but you're going to notice that the price of everything has increased. And so you were able to fill your cart yesterday with $100. Today you go into the grocery store with that same $100 and you only get half as much goods. And you wonder, why is the price of everything higher? It's because the government printed more money. Like, well, how could that happen? Is it just magic? No. 2 things happen, and there's social studies videos that I explain this in great detail. But to real quickly explain how this inflation happens, two things happen. When the government prints a bunch of money, that means we have a bunch of money. That means we all have cash and we're all bidding and buying the same amount of goods. The grocery store didn't add a bunch of groceries. There's still the same amount of groceries in the grocery store. The thing that's changed is we all now have money and we're all bidding like an auction against each other to buy a gallon of milk. I'll pay $1, I'll pay $2, I'll pay $3. We're fighting for the same limited amount of goods with more money. We've increased demand, we've increased spending, and so through a bidding war, that's one reason why the prices go up. Two, if you're running the grocery store and you realize that people have more money and people are buying more things and that the demand has increased for your milk, if you're a smart grocery store owner, then you're going to realize, whoa. There's all these people coming in to buy milk. You know what I could do? I could raise the price and it would be fine because they have plenty of money. And so smart businessmen will realize the increase in demand because of the increase in money supply, and they will increase prices and they will be just fine. Gold standard. So once upon a time, you could take your Federal Reserve note, which it says on your dollar bill if you look closely, and exchange it for gold. It was as good as gold. You could exchange your dollar bills, which are basically receipts, for gold. That's called the gold standard. We don't have this anymore. And even longer, how did this even happen? Well, what you would do way back in medieval biblical times, the beginning of civilization almost, you could exchange your gold into a bank. You'd say, hey, I don't want to lug this gold around. It's heavy. It's hard to keep track of. People are trying to steal it from me. Can I put it in your vault? They would say, sure, we'll give you a receipt, an IOU for one bar of gold. Bring that receipt back to the vault and we'll give you your gold. So instead of having to haul around all of your gold, you now have just a piece of paper. It's a receipt. It says, I have a piece of gold in this vault. And if I go take this piece of paper in there, they're going to give me my gold back. Perfect. It's a receipt. Well, what you then could do is go to the store and say, hey, you know those ice skates that you have? I really want them, but I don't have my gold on me. I tell you what, store, I'll give you a receipt that is as good as gold. You take this receipt to the bank and they'll give you a bar of gold in exchange. And they're like, yeah, sure. Just give us that piece of paper. Give us that receipt. We'll take that. Here are your roller skates. Then the store takes the receipt, takes it to the bank. The bank gives them a gold. You know what that IOU looks a lot like? You know what that receipt looks a lot like? A dollar bill. It's basically as good as gold. That's how you create paper currency. That's the history of paper currency. That's what we have today. But technically not, because we are no longer on a gold standard where you can give your piece of paper for gold. You can't do that anymore. But that's how this got created. Now we're stuck with the dollar bills and really no gold backing. The problem with a gold standard is the government can't print a bunch of money. And if the government can't print a bunch of money, they can't increase spending. And when you increase spending, you buy more stuff. That creates more jobs. And that's one way to stimulate the economy. You can't print a bunch of money if you don't have the gold to back it up. You can only have as many dollars as you have gold under the gold standard. In the 70s, our government will say, forget about the gold standard. We're just going to print money whenever we want. And when we print money whenever we want, we'll give it out to the people. The people will spend it. They'll increase whatever demand for goods. The toy store factory is going to have to hire more workers, and the economy is going to grow. And the only way that we can get there is by getting rid of the gold standard. If we have a gold standard, they can't print money, and we can't get a bunch of money to the people, and the economy can't grow. So they say, let's get rid of it, right? If you have a gold standard, you can only have a set amount of money. And that also protects the value of that money and keeps it pretty consistent. If you have that, though, you can't print a bunch of money. You can't loan it out. They can't spend it at the store. Then the store's not buying more skates from the factory, and that means less jobs. So the plan and the economy suffers. And the plan for the government is, look, this thing stinks. We need to be able to print money. If we can print money, we can stimulate the economy. We can't print money as long as we're stuck to this gold standard of every dollar has to be attached to gold. So the government will eventually abandon the gold standard and just start printing money, which is what we live in today. So it's just paper. It's not really gold anymore. So why is it worth anything? The dollars that we have, the reason that they're worth something is once upon a time, you could actually exchange them for gold. Well, you can't anymore. So why is it worth something? Because the government says so. That's it, period. Fiat currency. Why is a dollar worth anything? Because the government says so, and we're all willing to accept this. And as long as everybody believes that money's worth something, then guess what? It's worth something. Magic. Stagnation. Stagnant, showing no activity. So we're talking about stagflation, stagnant economy plus inflation, showing no activity, no growth. This is growth, awesome. But if you look closely, you're going to see here in the 1970s, a stagnant economy. It is not growing. That's not good. Like we talked about, spend money, we buy more stuff, we make more stuff, the economy will go up, 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 up. Well, not during this time period. We had stagnation in the late 60s to the early 1980s, and the government's trying to print money to stimulate it, but it's not working. So we've got stagnation and inflation. Remember, inflation is basically the price of all the goods have gone up, or your dollars are not worth as much anymore because the government's printed too many. Supply of the money's gone up, so thus the price goes down. That's a fact. That's a law of economics. You cannot get around it. And so while you're still making $1,000, that $1,000 doesn't go as far anymore. Because remember, the money's not worth anything anymore. So you may be making $1,000, but based on inflation, it really is only $700. Remember we talked about going to the grocery store, you have $100 and you filled your cart the next day because of inflation, you can only get half of that. That's what we're looking at here. Now, inflation's not a bad deal if your wages go up because they're supposed to, but often that's not the case. Your wages don't go up, they stay the same. The money becomes worth less and your check does not change. It should change because everything else changes. And a perfect example, remember, inflation, it's either the devaluation of money or the general rise in prices of goods and services. So technically what should happen, and sometimes this does happen, your paycheck should increase gradually. It should go to $1,050 or $1,100. Not because you're good, not because you've gotten a raise, just because of inflation, you're steadily going to increase. Perfect example is milk. You watch milk prices. Milk prices will increase under inflation. $1.50 for a gallon of milk. Oh, now all of a sudden it's $2.50. Why? Again, you go back to the two main causes for inflation or the general rise in the price of goods. That's people bidding for the same resources. We've increased the money supply, but we have not increased the supply of milk. So we're fighting for those gallons of milk, and that bidding war between customers increases the price. Also, the guy selling the milk realizes that people have all of this cash to spend, and he knows that he can get away with charging more for milk and not lose any customers. Now, all this wouldn't be bad if you get an increase in your paycheck, but typically it doesn't happen, and that makes it really hard, and that leads to inflation with stagnation. Also during this time, making things worse was OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. You can see them on the map. These countries all got together. They all formed a cartel to control illegally under the US's standards, but under the world's laws, this is not illegal. They all work together to control the supply of oil and mess around with the prices and basically do whatever they want. Sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's economical, and sometimes the OPEC countries make moves in terms of the price of oil or limiting the supply of oil for political reasons. And in the 1970s, we had Israel versus the Muslim or Arab lands. According to the map, Israel is the Jewish nation trapped between all of these countries that don't really get along. I'm not going to get into that, but nonetheless, we as Americans have always helped and supported Israel. We've supported all these other countries as well, but these OPEC nations do not like when we help Israel out. They do not like this. There's more political reasons they think that Israel may have stolen this land. I'm not getting into that. Just know that these countries don't necessarily get along, and when we help Israel, then they are going to try to punish us. And so what OPEC did would limit the supply of oil. When you don't have oil, that's going to cause all kinds of problems in your economy. Everything runs on fuel. Everything runs on energy. When you don't have that, it's going to hurt factories. It's going to help stores, and that's going to create stagnation. That's going to hurt your economy. So we had a lot of bad economic things happening during this time. It's just one of those things that you have to deal with. So there it is, stagflation, which is a stagnant economy with inflation on top of that really hurt the economy throughout the 70s and early 80s. The gold standard, once upon a time, the amount of dollar bills was attached to the amount of gold that we had, and that created consistent prices, that created a very consistent, safe economy. Our economy didn't boom or grow at a large rate, and it may have, this gold standard limited the growth of our economy, but it also prevented a lot of disasters and failures within the economy. So when you're on a gold standard, you can't really just take off, but you also don't necessarily crash as well. It's very consistent, but nonetheless, we are no longer on the gold standard. You cannot exchange your dollars for gold. Your dollar is only worth $1 because the government says so. It's a complete fiat currency. It's complete paper. It's completely made up out of thin air. It's imaginary. But as long as we all believe this lie and we all accept this, then it's going to be fine. And then last is OPEC. That was the the Organization of Petroleum, which is oil or fuel, exporting countries. They have a cartel. They work together. They control prices. They do that for their own gain financially. Sometimes they work together to punish their enemies. In this case, we had them punishing Israel and punishing America. Today, we don't really run into too many problems with OPEC, but occasionally it can happen, but it doesn't happen as much as because America has become more energy dependent. We have natural gas, we have renewable resources. We are finding ways so that we can fight back against OPEC. So not a big problem in our life today because of our energy independence, and we don't necessarily need the Middle East for our energy sources, but it's still always going to be an issue that will happen.